Second thing I would like to say is that while I agree with Sayyid Muhammad regarding the importance of transitional justice, I think it's very important that transitional justice does not get considered only in light of the literature on transitional justice that has come mainly from Western institutions, given their experiences in other countries. And that transitional justice must try to link up with the spiritual and religious and tribal and social heritage of each country. And each context is very different. So transitional justice in Egypt, with its very long history of juridical tradition and great professors and jurists like Sanhouri, who even wrote the Libyan, good chunk of Libyan laws, is one thing. In Tunisia, with their own jurists and the tradition of Zaytuna and so on, etc. And in Libya, again, we're a little bit more tribal, a little bit less cosmopolitan historically, and where Sufi orders like the Sanusiya played a very strong role in building up certain spiritual resources in the country. It is extremely important to bear in mind these other elements in developing notions of transitional justice. And one of the things that we've been working on, very preliminary work, and hence my great interest in the work of Sheikh bin Bayyah, because he's an expert in an area of jurisprudence which is called Maqasid al-Sharia, which is the kind of a tradition that looks at the spirituality or the spirit of the law, the intentionality of the law, the philosophy of law, if you want, kind of similar to Montesquieu and on the spirit of the laws, where you're not literal and you're not narrow-mindedly looking at just rules, but looking at the intentionality of the whole thing. And interestingly, in tradition, and this is an Andalusian and North African phenomenon, Maliki approach to this, where certain things or values have to be preserved through Sharia, through the law, through any rule of law that we would like to develop. And these include life. We have to preserve life. We have to preserve property. We have to preserve faith. We have to preserve mind or intellect. And we have to preserve honor. And if you look at what has happened in Libya over the last 42 years or so, you will find that in all of these areas there's been destruction. There is actually an old joke now, but it is said that when Muhammad Barad'i visited Libya to do an inspection for the atomic, what do you call it, agency, energy, yeah. He wrote a report on Libya, it is said, this is a joke, this is not real, consisting of 2 lines. After the inspection, he wrote, weapons of mass destruction, none. Mass destruction, plenty. meaning Gaddafi actually did do mass destruction in Libya, and he destroyed the fabric of society and the values of society on all 5 levels. He destroyed life through killings and torture and imprisonment. He destroyed property by confiscations, complete confiscations of private property in '78, the burning down of the land registry, okay? And because of this, all property issues are so messed up in Libya. He destroyed minds by destroying the universities and hanging students in the university. He destroyed faith by he closed down the Dar al-Ifta. He closed down anything to do with jurisprudence, religious institutions, Sufi orders. He burned the books. He burned libraries. He destroyed the Jahbub, great center of learning. And he destroyed honor by not only resorting to rape as a weapon during this last war, but systematically dishonoring people. He actually used dishonor to control his officials and his followers and so on. So what you have is a country that is in great need of healing. And it is very important to not limit transitional justice to legalistic thinking. It is very important to think of it in therapeutic terms and healing terms, and to understand that it has to work at multiple levels. Now, Libya is a very rich country in resources, and these resources are not only the oil and the gas. There are massive spiritual resources. It is a country of poets, of very ancient tribal customs that do have conflict resolution mechanisms and institutions. It is rich with a Sufi tradition that emphasizes forgiveness and compassion. It has great jurists and fuqaha who unfortunately have been living in isolation and thinking in isolation, who now need to get together. So key to transitional justice in Libya is tapping again into these fonts of wisdom. And thanks be to Allah, we are already seeing this happen. We've had, this week actually, we're having another national reconciliation major conference in Tripoli. But just last week, there was a major conference with the tribal elders, whereby tribes from the east, the south, and the west met and are trying to use tribal-based conflict resolution resources to work on improving the situation between conflicting tribes, for example. Also, our religious scholars have been again and again meeting. First of all, they started meeting amongst their own cliques, meaning the Sufis were meeting by themselves, the Salafis were meeting by themselves, the Ikhwanis were meeting by themselves, the jurists were meeting. And now, this week, there is a big conference where they're all meeting together, inshallah. So there is more and more conversation. We've always seen the phenomenon of bridge builders between these various religious groups. And women have also been meeting. They've had very successful series of conferences and are now meeting with other organizations. So civil society is being reactivated. And what's really nice is that we're not importing models from outside. We are reading heavily. We've read much of the literature on transitional justice that comes out of specialized institutions, be they British or American or UN or European. And so we are learning. We know that we don't know, and we are learning. But we are also trying to make sure that this is an authentically Libyan process, and that no generalization is made onto Libya from even our neighbors. One of the things that I've warned about in yesterday's sessions, the work groups, was the notion that there is one single Arab Spring, and that there is one single trend in every country. I believe that many trends are country-specific. There are multiple springs, and these springs are partial, and there are pockets of autumns and summers and within the springs. And it is extremely important not to think that there is a single narrative that can encompass the whole story of what is happening. There are multiple narratives. There is polyphony, to put it in Mikhail Bakhtin's terminology. There is no one voice. There is no one line. And it's very complex. And I find it very useful to think of what is happening in Libya, even just Libya, in terms of complexity theory and phenomena of emergence, phenomena of flocking, and phenomena of networks or networks of networks. There is no single command and control center in all that is happening. And some people are freaking out. They say, hey, without single command and control, we're going to have chaos. But interestingly, we're having stability in Libya, almost miraculously. And people are saying, this is weird, this shouldn't be so stable, but it is stable. And the reason for the stability is the massive parallel nature of this, meaning that no one controls everything. And that is a good thing. It's not such a bad thing. Even with weapons, people were saying that it's very bad that weapons are widely spread. Yes, it is bad, but it's not as bad as weapons being monopolized by Gaddafi only. And the fact that people know that the other person has weapons means that they are more careful in attacking another tribe or another. So I'm sorry for taking so long, but just to summarize, transitional justice is incredibly important, as Muhammad rightly says, and we are seeing these phenomena that the professor was pointing to, citizens and citizenry, but it's happening in different ways. A Libyan citizen is also a tribal creature. He's also a religious creature. So the idea of a Jeffersonian Enlightenment citizen is not quite applicable. So even when we say citizens, we have to be careful to make sure that it is. So yes, transitional justice is happening, but it will happen in a healthy way, in a healing way, if it is a lot more complex than just jurisprudence, and if it taps into the authentic traditions of the country.